next scientific Saturday. What is scientific Saturday? S raised to 2? No, it's not S raised to 2. Here, basically, we are going to research, on various techniques of breathing, meditation, all of this, and the impact that this will happen on our system, both physical and behavioral. Yeah, and all this is quantified, and it's going to be revealed week after week. Okay, and today, so what we're going to explore today, basically the relationship between, I mean, it's the exam season right now, isn't it? February, March is exam season. So we're going to find out the relationship between stress and children. Yeah. Normally we think it's going to be like this. Not really. It's not going to be an ulta smiley. We don't know what's the truth. We'll find out. Okay. We have two stalwarts with us here. Okay. Malaji, a renowned cricketer. Yeah. And she has played for the Indian cricket team. And she also coaches the Karnataka team. Okay. And she has several free schools with a deep understanding of child behavior. And to add to that also, she's the director of Children and Teens Desk at the Art of Living. Welcome, Malaji. Glad to have you with us here today. Yeah.
Thank you, Sunita. And my hi to everybody out there.
We also have Divya ji with us, who has joined us. Yeah, she is a absolute research enthusiast. Yes, we must see her working. And she's an engineer, a scientist. She's also the executive director of Sri Sri Institute of Advanced Research at the Art of Living. Divya ji, pleasure to have you with us today. Yeah. And now the floor is totally open to both of you.
Hi, Divya. Good to have you back.
Hi, Mala.
Hi.
Sorry.
It's so nice to be on such a platform where we discuss about two very varied aspects, science and spirituality, and on a Saturday. So I think it's not yes 2, it's yes 3.
I like that.
And yeah, Sunita was sharing exam season, and I'm sure kids are not smiling like you and me, nor are the parents smiling like you and me. They're running behind the kids. A lot of parents do, share with us what is this, what happens when the exam season comes, when there is this new kind of a mind pandemic that comes over, and children behave in such weird ways, and we don't understand what is happening. And if we look at children, they are actually lost. And we don't know, many a time, parents are not aware how to deal, children are not aware. But what do you think from the scientific angle about all these things, about how it affects children, the exam, the whole thing about exams?
Thanks, Mala. I think this is a topic which we all have experienced. Like, I remember that I want to share a personal experience before we delve into science. I think exam stress is something that nobody has escaped in their life. I mean, everybody, maybe there are few exceptions, but most people have experienced it. I remember when I was studying for IIT, I think I was spending 80% of my time being stressed and 20% of my time studying. So I think what happens is that the reason why children get so much fever or, so many symptoms or the fear or whatever, it's the stress response in their body. See, when a child is growing, their brain is different than your and my brain. The way their brain is developing is different. And because of that, they respond differently to stress. And that's why many times the symptoms of fever come up, because what stress does, when the child feels enormous pressure on them to perform well in the exams, it causes stress in them. And that decreases immunity. We know that stress is bad for our immune system. We all have been through this immense pandemic, whether it's young child or adults. It suppresses immunity. Stress suppresses your immune system. And because of that, children are more prone to getting sick. getting headaches. Also, what I've seen is many times children vomit or have nausea. That is because acute stress, intense acute stress can affect their vagus nerve. And that creates a vomiting sensation or nausea for them. So all the symptoms that we see in a child, when a child says my stomach is unwell, I'm feeling sick in my stomach, or I'm having fever, it is just a stress response. And that stress is being caused by their, the situation that they are in, which is exams, which nobody likes.
All of us have undergone exams. And I always thought all these things that were happening to me before an exam were just a projection of why I don't want to study rather than it being real science. But today it's really nice to understand that it is happening to the kids physically also. It's not just that they are just sharing that these things are happening. And also interesting fact that you mentioned that their brains are different than our brain. The way they grow, the brain evolves is different, throws a different light onto all these things. And what does this kind of stress, and also the fact that it is presenting in such different things, do to their brain, Divya?
Stress arises in the brain. The first place where stress comes in our body is our brain. When we perceive a situation that is in which we feel unsafe or we feel threatened. Now it could be, responding to a test, or it could be my worrying that my mother will scold me. Our brain has this part called amygdala, which I call the drama queen of the brain, which is the part of the brain that senses danger. And that is the part of our limbic brain, which is the reptile brain. See, now dogs also have a brain. Rabbit also has a brain. We also have a brain, right? So there are certain parts of our brain which are common with those animals, which is called the limbic system, which is our fight or flight response, of which amygdala is a part. And then there are certain parts of our brain which make us a little bit more evolved, like our prefrontal cortex, which is the seat of higher cognition and learning and, reasoning that we need in our life. So what happens when the stress response happens through the amygdala, then it unleashes a chain of chemical reactions in our body. And produces certain hormones like cortisol is one of them. Now, what happens is that a little bit of stress is good, little bit, just like enough, let's say, maybe not even the amount of salt in food, even less than that is good because it makes us more focused. But when children or any adult feels chronic stress, like they feel elongated periods of stress, which children can feel if they are repeatedly tested in exams and all, it can actually shrink their brain. It changes chronic stress can shrink your brain. Chronic stress can change the way your amygdala functions. And there's another part of our brain called hippocampus, which is responsible for memory. Now, there was one very famous research study where there was a person who went into war and he hurt a part of his brain. And doctors removed his hippocampus. So what happened was he would get up in the morning and he would not remember his name. Then during the day, he would learn his name or learn parts of his house, go to sleep, wake up and not remember. So they realized that our long-term memory is stored in our hippocampus. So hippocampus also gets affected by stress. And the more stressed you are, the less efficient your hippocampus becomes. That is why, sometimes even when we know everything, we sit in front of the exam and we forget everything. We're like, we can't remember. Our memory just goes for a toss. That's because of the stress response in our brain that changes the way we function. Like, for example, if you're very stressed, you cannot access your prefrontal cortex part of the brain. Your brain forces you to rely on your limbic system, which is your fight or flight response. And because you cannot access the prefrontal cortex, you cannot recall things, you make silly mistakes, you are not able to solve complex problems. So stress has a very intimate relationship with the brain because it starts in the brain. And the body and our brain cannot differentiate between a real threatening situation, like a car coming at me to hit me, or me imagining a stressful situation, like maybe what if I get something in the exam which I don't know. So we do not have the capacity to differentiate between the two situations. We react, our body and our brain react in the same way, you know. So
So all this is the fault of the brain, not us, the amygdala, the hippocampus, and all those things. All
brain
the
is a
drama
part
things
of us.
that you mentioned.
Yeah, it's a fault of our brain. So then we have to train our brain so that, you know, and actually it has been found that people who meditate, people who do breathing techniques, and people who meditate, their amygdala functions differently than others. So their amygdala is not so hyper, you know. So when you meditate, you sort of calm your amygdala down so that even if there's a stressful situation, your brain doesn't immediately go into this, you know, hyperdrive of stress response. So you can actually, yes, stress begins in the brain and we cannot control. Can you control your brain right now? No, it's functioning on its own. But by doing breathing exercises, by doing meditation, you can change the way your brain functions. That's the only way you can change your brain functions. And that's one way you can not make it your brain's fault. Make your brain your friend rather than being your enemy in the exam.
Actually, when we look at the school scenario or we look at between friends, when we are playing, when we are interacting with friends, everything comes to us. But when we go to the exam, when the teacher is asking a question, suddenly, you become so stunned and you become tongue tied and you don't know, you start sweating. And especially in an exam, if you just see that question paper, you don't know what's going to happen. You're not even worried you will fail or pass, but there is kind of an impasse there. It just stuns you. And I think one of the biggest fears that children have, where, I've been teaching for quite some time and teens share, is the fear of failure. They are more scared that they may fail rather than they failing, So how do we scientifically look at this? Because this is one of the biggest things that we have seen in many of our programs. It is not just in an exam. The fear of failure is there in most of the sports people, most of the artists. When they just go on to stage, suddenly, you're not sure, these things come up. And in any sphere of life, I think fear of failure is one of the biggest hurdles or one of the biggest things that we as human race have to understand and to overcome as individuals. So, but from a scientific perspective, what are your thoughts on that?
Mala, I mean, you have such tremendous experience of working with children and teens over 22 years. And I'm sure you have seen this phenomena is quite universal, I would say. And I think that, like I said, the fear of, so when you said about sweating and being blank, that is all because of the stress response, which makes our sympathetic nervous system very active in our body. And that's what causes sweating. Have you ever noticed that when we are stressed about something, we sometimes use the bathroom a lot more? That is all, all these things that happen to children and adults. I think we need not ridicule them or say, oh, this is not real. This is actually part of stress response. But this fear of failure, I can certainly address for children and teenagers. Like I said, their brain is different than ours. So what happens is for children and for teenagers, their prefrontal cortex is not very developed. It takes time to develop. They rely a lot more on their amygdala and their limbic system to take decisions. That is why, they are more impulsive. I think this every parent should little bit understand that the way, when we become adults, we can rationalize, we can have self-control. All these things are at the seat of all these things like self-control, rationalizing are the prefrontal cortex. But for children and teenagers, prefrontal cortex is not very well developed. So they have no choice but to rely on amygdala, limbic systems. So because of that, there is a lot more fear sometimes, which they're not able to rationalize. And that is why they are very impulsive. They are, they can be moody, they can be impulsive. That is because of there's so many hormones are changing in their body, but their brain is not matured enough. Brain matures slower than the rest of our body. And some science says that girls mature a little faster in terms of brain than boys, but it's not conclusive. But regardless, because their brain prefrontal cortex is not as developed, the fear of failure can be higher in them, which they cannot justify or rationalize or push it down. I think that affects them. But I wanted to ask you something. I want to say that we have been talking about exam stress and amygdala and prefrontal cortex, and we know it exists. See, understanding the science behind it is great because it helps us rationalize. It helps us not challenge our child the next time they say that I'm actually, having some stomachache before the exam, but to see how to address the root cause, which is the stress, right? So what are some of the practical applications? I mean, you've been working with children and teenagers for 22 years now. What is the best practical solution to handle exam stress?
Wow. Yes. Like everything in life, I think this is a knowledge and this is something that we need to learn. And what we need to learn is we need to learn that we have the solutions, we have the tools inside of us or within us. And one of the best tools is the breath. And when we understand the science of breath, then we realize that so much can be handled. I wouldn't say that stress will not come. Definitely it is there. But looking at that situation can change. The viewpoint can change. The only way to perhaps look at understanding our emotions is through the breath. And when we start working with our breath, which is what we do in our Utkarsh Yoga and Medha Yoga programs, which teach them pranayama, of course, we teach them the very world-renowned technique given by Gurudev Shri Ravi Shankar, the Sudarshan Kriya, which is what could I call packaged for children and teens in a slightly different fashion. What happens is that their response, their understanding of the situation starts changing. And how you said the maturity of the brain is what decides how impulsive they are or how quickly they take decisions. May not be the right decisions for that moment, but handling that is through the breath, through the practice of pranayama and Sudarshan Kriya. We have heard from parents that my child has suddenly become calmer. Children say that, Didi, I'm able to see the difference between before and after. And we also have a small technique called the concentration pranayama, which is a 3-minute technique. And we do encourage children to do this just before the exam. Sit and do it wherever you are. And the sharpness of the intellect, the focus that you get, and the calmness of mind from which you can operate is there for the next 4 to 5 hours. And though I'm not allowed to, I still do it when there is very long meetings for me in my own office, and it is tremendous. Suddenly the eyes are like that, and that is the kind of focus and that's the kind of state of mind you can come to where things don't throw you off your balance. So practice of Sudarshan Kriya, meditation and breathing techniques is what I have seen bring a change from inside. Though talking to them perhaps brings a little bit of change, but the deep change happens at the root when we work with the breath and the mind and meditate.
Yeah, it's very important. What you said about concentration, because breath, there's one research study that also says that memory and breath are linked. So if we learn something on the inhale, we remember it more than when we learn something on the exhale. So memory and the breath are intimately connected. And of course, stress and breath are intimately connected as well. I mean, there is so much research studies on breath and our stress response. And our vagus nerve, which is a prime player, a key player in our stress response or in our health of the body, and our mind is vagus nerve. And our breath and vagus nerve are very intimately connected. And in fact, under SSIER, we have researched on Medha Yoga and Sudarshan Kriya. And what we have found is that this study was done on, this particular study I'm talking about was done on college students who were just entering college. So like teenagers, just teenagers or just a little bit older. What we found was that, when we are under stress, let's say exams are a big concern, stress, especially in medical college. The study was done in medical college, and medical students have intense exams, and they're under so much stress. What we found was people who practice Sudarshan Kriya, their cortisol levels, which is the main biomarker of stress. So a hormone called cortisol gets released anytime we are stressed. And it's one of the main hormone. Otherwise, how do you measure stress, right? I mean, somebody can say I'm stressed, but the best way to measure stress is through cortisol levels. It was found that people who practice Sudarshan Kriya, their cortisol level is 40% lower than their peers under exam stress. That's almost half. So this is the power of breathing and Sudarshan Kriya, that even under the hardest situations, you can still have low cortisol. Means your body is able, like you said, your body is able to manage stress. So then your brain is not going to go into that limbic drive and, not have access and forget things and, not be able to reason. So this was one research study done where we found that it really, really reduces stress. We've also seen in Medha Yoga, Utkarsh Yoga, and even Medha Yoga 2, we have seen that immediately after the program itself, children and teens report lower level of stress, which continues over time. So we have seen that children who practice, they certainly have the lowest levels of stress after a while. But even if they don't practice, they still have low levels of stress. So it certainly has an impact on, reducing the stress element in a child or a teen's life. It's very helpful.
It just brings it back to the fact that we need to learn how to breathe properly. Of course, we are born with it, but I guess we lose that over a period of time due to all the various influences we have. In fact, one of the kids' mother came to me in one of the programs on day 3 of the program. It's just a 3-day program, a 4-day program that we have for 3 hours. And she comes on the 3rd day and she told me, ma'am, I don't know what you did in the program, but I am amazed. And I was like, okay, what happened? Because I was really unaware of what has happened. She said, my child came and told me, sorry, this kid is 8.5, 9 years
Music
old.
to your parents' ears.
And I'm like, okay, what is so big in saying sorry? I mean, and on the previous day, on day 2, we had played a game and, unfortunately I lost. And we had taken a bet that whoever loses does some, very nice sit-ups. And I had to do the sit-ups. So now this kid went and told sorry. I believe this kid, the mother is sharing with me that throughout his entire 8.5 years, he has been unable to say sorry and thank you to anybody. And for the first time when she heard it, she's like, are you saying sorry? Really? And then when the mother questioned the kid said, if my teacher can say sorry, I can say sorry. Now, what I'm trying to bring about here is he has done 2 days of Sudarshan Kriya. He has done meditation. His perspective changed of looking at a situation, saying that it's okay to do something. From saying, I am not going to do this, to it's okay to do it. Now, this kind of change that comes, which is so deep, I mean, it is like a transformation which carries on through life. And I think that comes only when you start going in, looking at your breath, looking at your mind and addressing it. So I guess there is a huge, benefit from learning these things. And sometimes I feel I should have done this when I was younger.
Don't we
You know,
all?
when I see,
Don't we
don't
all?
we all? Yeah, we
Certainly.
all wish that. And
Certainly.
like any other practice, like perhaps Gurudev keeps talking about dental hygiene. It's like mental hygiene, and spending 20, 25 minutes or half an hour every day brings about such a difference in the understanding, in their personality, in their intellect, in their memory, you name it, and it is there. But one thing has always surprised me a little bit. Teachers, we keep hearing saying that some kids are intelligent and some kids are not. Uh, Perhaps from their perspective, when they look at the marks or whatever. But how does intelligence fit in all these things? Because I have seen something different. I have seen there is a lot more emotional intelligence, there is a lot more spiritual intelligence, there is a lot more street smartness with some kids. But scientifically, how does intelligence fit in all these things?
So, I mean, intelligence is a quality that every child or every human being needs, as we go in our life. Scientifically, there are different types of intelligence, like you say, emotional intelligence, spiritual intelligence. But if we just talk about intelligence in the normal context, like general intelligence, there are two types of intelligence. One is called as crystallized intelligence, which is the intelligence that we gain by reading books or going to school or watching a movie or watching a documentary. So information that's stored in our head, number one. And the other type of and this intelligence grows as we go in our life. We remember more things, so it keeps growing. The other one is called the fluid intelligence, which is the ability to reason, comprehend, learn, which is ability to think on the spot, which is ability to be creative, problem solve, which you call as street smart. But it's more than street smartness. It is your ability to look at a situation which is new to you and say, okay, this is how I'm going to handle it. Because every situation in your life you cannot handle by crystallized intelligence. Every situation in your life, there are a lot of new situations that come every day. So how am I going to find a solution? That is called fluid intelligence. And many times when kids are stressed, or when adults are also stressed, neither can we access our crystallized intelligence, neither can we access our fluid intelligence. But both with techniques like Sudarshan Kriya and meditation, you can increase both. One, you can increase your hippocampus strength. That helps you with crystallized intelligence. Because the stronger your hippocampus, stronger your memories. But very importantly, you can really increase your fluid intelligence. So we had done a research study on Medha Yoga, and we found that when children undergo Sudarshan Kriya, their ability to solve a puzzle, we run them through tests, and we found that tests that require concentration, attention, focus, problem solving abilities, their accuracy levels jumped by 33% immediately.
That's huge.
And yeah, and it stayed like there. It doesn't go away with time. So fluid intelligence can really come up with these practices. And every child, some children may not have crystallized intelligence. They might have more fluid intelligence. So their career choices can depend on, what type of intelligence is predominant in them. And we all have both. But certainly they both can be increased by doing practices like Sudarshan Kriya and meditation. And we have seen that in our research on Medha Yoga, and there's a lot of research on meditation also, which talks about fluid intelligence and meditation and says that fluid intelligence can go up to as much as 10 times more with meditation. So that is something, a big skill, in today's life where things are so absolutely competitive. Where is your edge? Everything is available online, but where is your edge in life?
Yeah.
Like you need an edge, right, to succeed. And this is your edge. I tell all my cousins and nieces and nephew that, this is your edge. This is what's going to give you the edge in life, where you will have that sharpness of your brain. You will have more fluid intelligence. You will have better concentration. this is the edge, you can give to your child or your teen in their life. I wish I had that when I was studying for IIT. I mean, I did get through, but it was so stressful. So,
Well, it was the exact opposite for me. I did get through, but it was very stress-free because I didn't know what was happening.
but you are a sports person, Mala. I think there is that capacity to endure stress that comes with sports naturally. I was a typical, student, and who wants to excel and is stressed and doesn't know how to cope with stress and goes and complains to her parents, and her parents keep consoling her. So I was a typical student like that. And I really wish I had this at that time. I would have saved so much of my time, watched a few more movies probably.
I guess it was the training in sports, but then there was always this thing inside. Though outside I was like, I'm cool. But inside there was this pinch, a big pinch actually, which was saying that I am not doing right by what I'm studying. Again, the fear of not knowing, and just, I would not say fight here, I would flight.
Yeah.
But somehow, anyway, my education did finish well. But that also brings me to another aspect where you're talking of intelligence and how intelligence is and how it works. What are your thoughts on intuition?
Intuition is an inborn capacity which all of us have, but
Okay.
But scientifically, you define intuition as ability to come to a reason, or ability to come to a conclusion without conscious processing of the brain. So our brain does a lot of unconscious processing. Like as you and I are talking, my brain is doing a constant check whether my food is digesting properly. I had dinner. Is my ear level? Is my ear level okay? Is my hand okay? Like my brain is constantly monitoring so many things internally. It's also monitoring my surroundings, even though I'm not aware of it. It's monitoring my surroundings. Actually, the purpose of the brain is to not show you what's not new. That's why after a while, if we have new curtains, after a while we stop seeing our curtains. Like we stop seeing things around us. So our brain does a lot of unconscious or subconscious processing, which we are not aware of. So intuition is when we are able to use that ability of our brain and come to a reason or come to a conclusion or process some information. Now, typically, people say that intuition comes with having a lot of tacit knowledge, like a lot of crystallized intelligence. But I believe what we have seen in, Art of Living with Intuition program, I believe that there is a way, especially for children and teenagers, to harness that ability to process things subconsciously very fast without even having that tacit knowledge of a subject. This is what we have seen. And I believe that our brain does immense, like it's very fast. We don't even recognize it. Haven't you seen it? Suppose you touch something very hot. By the time you realize it was hot, your hand is already out of that. Like you're not holding the pan and thinking, oh, it's hot, and then dropping it. You have dropped the pan and then you realize, oh, it was hot. Notice that next time if you have not noticed it by now. So my brain has recognized it was hot. It has already told my hand to move away. I've dropped the pan and then I'm aware that it was hot. Yeah. So our brain works at a very fast rate. We don't understand it fully. And I think intuition is harnessing or tapping into that ability of the brain to work subconsciously, unconsciously, and process information much faster than we would when we are aware.
Actually, as you were saying, we have these programs for children and teens called the Pragya Yoga or the intuition process. And we do have a lot of techniques wherein they come to this state of joyful, enthusiastic being at that moment. And they are able to access that particular thought or reach to that space inside us, which speaks to us, the inner voice or the sixth sense. And it strengthens that. It also gives them confidence to know that the thought is correct and also act on it. Because I'm sure many a times you have noticed that there is an intuitive thought, something tells us, but logically it doesn't make sense. So we're like, how can this happen? And then we realize, oh no, the thought was correct after some time.
It's hindsight. Intuition is in hindsight for us.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
So we have this program for 2 days. As I said, we do have a lot of, there are 3 or 4 programs to address various aspects in children. But primarily the Utkarsh Yoga is for children between 8 and 13, and then 14 to 18 is the Medha Yoga, where we give them slightly more techniques and more understanding in a very happy, joyful platform. And we have the Pragya Yoga, where we help them untap their potential to reach to that consciousness where everything comes from within. And that is a 2-day 3-hour 3.5 hours program, and we have seen a lot of kids benefiting from that also.
Mala, can I share one thing about
yes,
the
please
program?
go ahead.
So we have researched around, I would say 300 to 400 children, on intuition. And it's a fascinating thing for me because it's a wonder like how this happens. So what we did was we tested for the cognition, which is intelligence. So we made them, when we made them go through these tests, which required 100 trials. So one test had 100 trials, and in each of the trial they had to identify an object or something, simple test, but you can't learn on it. And the software was measuring their accuracy and their response time, like how long did it take for them to answer and how well did they answer. And so interestingly, we found that when they did the same test with their eyes open, right, they had a certain accuracy level and a certain response time, like how much time they took. But when they did the same test after the intuition process, with their eyes closed, we found that not only did their accuracy improve, their response time went down, which was very interesting.
Very interesting.
So it's not that their accuracy went up, so their response time also went up. Their response time went down, so it took them lesser time to do a better job on the test. And like I said, the test was randomized, so you can't learn. I mean, there is no way you can learn 100 set of, and it's randomly appearing on your screen. It's like a puzzle, it's like a game. But we had a vision scientist design it. And it was shocking to see that. It was like, okay, so your accuracy went up, but your response time also went down. And it was replicable. It's not like, that it was a fluke or we saw this across children. And it was very interesting to see that how their brain works is very different. And these are the things that, can help you with when a child is stressed under exam stress or, life generally so stressful. I mean, I look at today's children and I'm like, I'm so glad we didn't have social media when we were growing up. Yeah. At least I didn't have to worry about my friends not liking my Instagram photo. It's so much more pressure. It's just unbelievable.
Yeah.
We have some questions, Maladi, Divya Di. I'm just reading a couple of them. Yeah, I don't know how much time we have. Pranati Patra says, how to motivate teens to excel to their potential during examinations?
You have to, Malak, if I can respond.
Please.
I think you have to handle their underlying stress and their underlying emotions. I think these two things have to be addressed. And that can only happen if you create a lifestyle around them where they're able to address these two things. So they need to have space or techniques to, because this motivation, nobody wants to do badly in their life, right? Everybody wants to excel. That's an inherent nature. But what happens is that when they feel that they don't have the capacity, they might take a step back. And if they are given a space to express their emotions or to manage their emotions and to manage stress, I think it will help through these techniques that we have spoken about. But Mala, if you have a point of view here, please share.
I feel communication is the key, and also getting them to one of the programs would definitely help. Though maybe it might appear that during this crucial time when the exams are coming up, how can I give 3 hours or 2 hours a day for 3 days? But looking at the benefits of what they can achieve, it is really no-brainer. And I would highly recommend that you look into your own city and take your kid and encourage them to do these practices, or also come for an introductory session which keeps happening, and learn a little more about the programs, and get them to do some pranayama, meditation, and Sudarshan Kriya.
And Khushbu Khan says, please give me some advice. Tomorrow is my very important exam. Khushbu, I can tell you all the best. The rest, our guests will tell you.
Yeah,
If you go ahead, Mala, go ahead.
definitely don't spend all your time studying. Make sure you play a little.
Can I give you 2 tips? Khushbu, can I give you 2 tips? One, if you don't know any other technique to calm your mind or to be stress-free, just breathe and breathe out in a way that your exhale is longer. That will help you with stress. Okay. So before your exam, just take 20 deep breaths and with your exhale to be longer. Secondly, sleep well. Do you know that when we study, our memory consolidation happens at night? What you have studied. So no need to pull an all-nighter, whatever you can, and then sleep very nicely. So your brain retains that information because it will only retain that when you sleep. Yeah. So do those 2 things.
Great. It was a very enriching session, Maladi and Divya ji. Seriously, I mean, so much of light you all have thrown on such a simple subject like stress and exams in kids. Lot of insight. I got engrossed in between totally. So much of scientific and spiritual stuff. Thank you so very much. I'm sure parents and children must have gained a lot. So I guess the magic wand for a stress-free exam is join the Utkarsh Yoga program, join the Meda Yoga program, right? Thank you
One of
so
them,
much.
yes. And also
And
meditate.
sleep well. Sleep well.
All right.
Yeah.
Yeah. All the best to all children. Yeah. Tata.
Yeah, do
Thank you
well,
for
have
having
fun.
us. Bye.
Thank you.
Good luck.